So, fun fact, Springfield is actually the character that actually got me into Girls Frontline 1. You just go into a forum or the internet in general, and I see Springfield's picture, and I'm like, whoa, where did this character come from? She's super hot. So anyway, Springfield. She's coming to Girls Frontline 2, and she is going to be a excellent unit. And I'm going to tell you why she is so good, both in game and in lore. In Girls Frontline 1, she is actually probably the second most popular side character, the first being Watsuke or Macchiato, however you want to call her. The big reason for this is because she is in so much side content that is kind of crazy. Basically, whenever someone has any issues, they tend to go to Springfield. The reason for this is because the commander is usually busy. So they tend to go to the next best person, and that person has to be Springfield. She is so mature, and she has a lot of insight onto things because she has so much knowledge, and she thinks about the philosophy of Dahl so much. A large part of that is because of the commander. The commander allowed her to expand her horizons and have a stronger personality regarding herself. So in the community, she is often regarded as the American housewife. That's because she's an American gun, but the big thing is that she's pretty old-fashioned. She never really seems to be at a point where she is not holding herself together, even when she is on the brink of death. She's one of those people that doesn't have any particular weakness on the inside. She has a ton of inner strength. Now, as far as her performance as an actual T-doll, she's pretty middle of the road as far as I can tell. They never really give any stats or anything like that. She is never really regarded as a elite, as one of the elites anyways. Obviously, she is regarded as an elite T-doll once you get into Girls Frontline 2. But in Girls Frontline 1, she's basically a normal T-doll. But as far as achievements are concerned, she is one of the few survivors of Operation Polarized Light. That just means that she didn't need to get backed up, and she was never heavily damaged. She was one of the few people who was holding back the military while the commander did his thing inside. But other than that, her main story influence is extremely small. But again, the side content is massive. In fact, she was so involved in side content that she actually got a glow up in her artwork. This initially made us think that she was going to get a Mod 3 upgrade. For those who don't know, that just means she was getting a buff. But that never happened, which is kind of a shame because her day one unit vibes were extremely high, which means that she just wasn't very good. In fact, people regard her as bad. Honestly, it's true. She is bad. And that's because she is called a bamboo rifle unit. What that basically means is that she puts all of her power in one shot, which is not good in Girls Frontline 1. Attack speed is what you actually want, thanks to the way how the game works. So thanks to that, she doesn't really have much of a place in the meta, or even as a casual player, because Girls Frontline 1 is so demanding in your team building that anyone who's particularly bad, you can't really use unless you're going to hyper carry them. But this also makes it even more surprising that she is still so popular, because the majority of the time, if you want to be popular, you either have to be a really good unit or you have to be really prevalent in the story. Springfield was never really prevalent in either one of those. At least for Macchiato's case, she was a very powerful starter unit. Springfield never really had that pleasure. But thanks to her artwork and her prevalence in side content, as well as her aura, more or less, she became widely popular in both China and in the West. In fact, she won twice in a popularity contest for summer. And I think you can say that's more about her skin for the summer than anything else. Whew. But this overall became a meme with her. In fact, in one of the stories, one of the T-dolls said that Springfield is everyone's greatest rival for the commander's affection, but she's also their greatest confidant. It's just a great duality that Springfield has. She's not the best combat unit, but she happens to be one of the greatest T-dolls in the story, just for how much information she has and how reliable she is as a person. This all flips over in Girls Frontline 2 though. She not only has her own cafe, but she's also an information broker, and she has insider information with both Namfa and other information brokers where she has this whole spy network. And through this network, they're actually able to track the commander who has been exiled for over 10 years. So she's one of the few T-Dolls that actually was able to achieve her dream. But her greatest weakness also has to be her greatest strength, which is that she is so dedicated to the commander that she will actually close down her cafe if it meant that she can protect the commander again. Now, of course, she brings the cafe back on the Elmo. But honestly, she just has so much of that housewife vibe that it's going to be very interesting to see the reaction when Springfield eventually comes out and she's shown off in her own story. Because even as is, she is so heavily prevalent in a story right now, and she's not even the main character. She's not even the character focus. Springfield was able to talk to the commander in the Center Racy event, and she was able to get down deep in the commander's insecurities and actually able to make him feel better. I would say that that puts her on the same level as Dandelion as far as that dynamic is concerned. Of course, she's more vanilla than Dandelion, but the fact that they were they were separated for 10 years, Springfield was able to represent not only herself, but also all of the Griffin T-Dolls, where there was nothing to forgive because they never really blamed the commander for his choices that he had to make during Girls Frontline 1. They will always love him, and they will always put him over themselves, which the commander hated in a way, but that's just how they operated. They will always put their trust in the commander, and Springfield was able to represent that. Now, quick note, gameplay wise, Springfield is going to be one of the best units to pull for, bar none. She is the Hydro enabler, and she is the one that will actually buff the hell out of everyone on the water team. The more dupes you have, the more damage she will do. At minimum, you should go for V1 because that will enable Tololo, who is your core DPS at this point, to do significantly more damage. On top of that, she's incredible support. She has insane healing. In fact, if she ever overheals, that basically turns to a shield that more or less turns her into a better Swami. So before Swami gets her buff later on, Springfield will be your greatest healer bar none. It's not even close. Now for me personally, Springfield is not my number one pick as far as T-Dolls are concerned. For me, that still goes to Ulrid, but Springfield will always be my top 5 favorites. She has an excellent personality. Even though she was my day one favorite Raifu, and I learned more about other T-Dolls, and that's why she's no longer number 1, she will never not be one of my favorites. Also, she's just hot as hell. Like, geez. They worked real hard on her design. They must have went into the lab for that one. They went over every meticulous detail for her summer skin. Jeez.